for a few minutes questions before, and then we have questions after too, but I don't know. I don't know if you get the chance to read what Carolina posted yesterday, the 3 releases, the narration of the 3 releases. It's good. The relations. We encourage you to study the narration of the 3 releases. I think that Carolina had put it already as a note, but it has many, many, many subtleties in it, in every single moment, and every single count, and every single path. And it is very important because it's the way that the mind, when it comprehends what's happening and the changes that are taking place, it's the way that the mind really connects with yourself and with the movement. Because otherwise we keep saying, you know, it's allow your mind to be present with you, but it doesn't mean anything if the mind doesn't understand that it's learning the motion and all of its subtleties. And then the actual subtleties is what grounds the mind within you, and it's the way you learn the motions then as a flowing circuit of energy. Then when the circuit of energy gets more and more connected to you, then you may not need the mind and the sensor remind you, because the mind is the same as the path, it's the same as the connection, it's the same as the movement. But once you learn it, you will have it forever. And then if you decided to teach it, you can guide the person to understand the subtleties of it. Because anybody who wants to start learning unity and motion, you will have to start with emotion, the mechanical aspect. And the mechanical aspect is only the beginning, because then once you get the mechanical aspect, you can begin to connect to the energy. And then in the third aspect, you get to connect to the space. And then when the energy, the space, and the biomechanical nature come together, you appear. That's you. Because the unity within yourself, it begins to flourish within the mind, experiencing everything, the energy experiencing everything, and the physiology being connected to the moment in a 3-dimensional relationship to everything. So it's a very specialized practice, but you know, you have the keys of everything. And what Carolina and I and Nancy, what we all wanted to do is to give you all the tools for you to really have it forever and to no longer be elusive. The idea of unity or movement that represents that and so forth. It's just simple once it becomes understood in the totality of its nature. Yeah, wonderful. So Lois, how are you? Lois, do you have any questions? You are no questions today, no? Okay. Do you know by memory all the Zooms yet? Do you know what everything else and everything? I'm expecting you soon. Yes, I'm learning it myself. Yeah, because reading it and look at it is a wonderful thing now, because even though we wrote it and we put it there and so forth, every time you read it becomes more present, because we're reading our own mind and our own self and our own interpretation of unity. So it's beautiful. So anyway, let's shall we start and then recording?
Yes. So just a reminder to mute yourself unless you're speaking. And Christy, if you can just make sure you look up at the
Oh, you're right. I put a bird there, but I keep thinking that I'm looking at you. So
I know.
I know. It's like, oh my God. I put a bird on top of it to remind me.
Yay.
Yes.
All right.
So now when I look into the bird in your screen, it looked like I look into you.
Look forward a little bit more. Look there. Yeah, right there. Okay. Forward. Now you're looking at us.
At the feet of the bird. Then.
Yes. Okay.
Fantastic. Good. It's kind of deceptive, no?
I know.
Because, well, no, it's not as what it is, but nevertheless, you know.
Are we muted?
Huh?
Yeah. What?
Do we have to mute?
It would be good. It would be good to mute unless you're speaking.
And
so
then
that we get good sound. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so shall we start then? Shall we recording?
We're recording. Yeah. Go ahead.
We're recording. Okay, fantastic. So today, what I would like to do, if it's possible, I would like to be able to complete the third dimension, the dimension of unity, because we have done the first, which is crown, that it was dedicated almost the entire first talk to crown. And then we have done the second one, which was consciousness, in the 10 dimensions as being consciousness. And here's Beverly. And then in the last one, we continue with the other two, and then we got involved in the emotions, which was very wonderful, but we never completed the third one. And I would like to do it today if it's possible. And just to refresh it a little bit, we know that I said to you that the crown, the nature of crown is everything, right? Crown is the moment of life, the moment of eternal existence, the fountain of life. It's our connection to everything. Crown, the light of the world, light. Remember, and then we said then consciousness is really actually the whole field of consciousness. It's not, even though it's an aspect of one of the dimensions, it represents the whole field of what we call the new consciousness of life. And when we're talking about the 10 dimensions, we are not talking from the perspective or linear perspective from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're talking about the whole field as it is existing inside of this 10 expressions of unity. And then I said to you in consciousness, when we did consciousness, that each of the dimensions shall contain within itself the other 9, plus the dimension that we are being with. So because I made a mistake in the Zoom number 8, and I said that each of the dimensions shall contain the other 10. It's not, it shall contain the other 9, plus the very dimension that we are looking at it. For example, crown shall contain the other 9 plus crown. Consciousness shall contain the other 9 plus consciousness. So then also said to you that each of the dimensions, even though it's one, it contains the meaning of that oneness is existing within the totality of the 10 now then, because it will be in the totality of the 9 plus the one that you are experiencing, or that you want learning, or that you want spending time with it, the one that you are really actually looking at it, and so forth. So it's a wonderful thing to spend time with the 10 dimensions, because when you do that, the consciousness begins to relate to everything inside of a larger field than just the thing itself. And it sees it from a larger perspective. Then the new consciousness of life is a whole perspective of wholeness within wholeness, from which we experience life and everything that we are connected to it, not from the unitary perspective of what it means, even though that is occurring too. You have the unitary perspective of what it means, but the mind gives you a whole perspective also of what that comes from, what it is. It's difficult to talk about words because you become the recipient of that experience. It's a consciousness that knows everything, feels everything, and existing in the moment as everything. And it's what we call the new consciousness, because it's not linear inside of the evolutionary understanding. It's holistic in the sense that it interprets all things from the whole picture, from the whole perspective. Yes, so this is important to understand when we go through each of the dimensions, that that's what is occurring. Okay, I forgot it, and I start looking to you again. So anyway, so I'm looking to the fixed words. So then again, we said that each of the dimensions shall contain the other 9 plus the dimension that you are studying or contemplating. We also understand that each of the 3 dimensions that we have done 2, and now we're going to do the 3rd one, shall contain as 3 dimensions the whole thing. And then the other one, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, is the full expression, the full reality shall contain it inside of the 3. So the Trinity then begins to be understood inside of a whole larger meaning. And it's important to remember that even though we say that the first triad is a Trinity, it's actually the nature of consciousness, of our human consciousness. We were made within the realms of 3 dimensions. Our consciousness have developed as the objective, subjective in the moment of life, as the perceiver, the one that is being perceiving and what is occurring in the field, as the giving and receiving and love itself. Everything had always existed inside of 3 dimensions, but we have interpreted in our evolutionary nature, mostly inside of the realms of 2 dimensions, inside of what we have called duality. So it created an enormous complexity that it was very necessary in order to eventually fulfill the whole scenario inside of the dualistic premises, that they could match the reality of the whole field as it happens in the harmonic convergence, And then we can be in one instant inside of the whole field of consciousness. So evolution was a blessing, even though it was the longest voyage of time. It took millions and millions and millions of years. And for us humans have taken us from the beginning of time to be in this moment in which we can really actually be in the presence of the moment and life itself now with a whole perspective of what has been our humanity, not only just my experience in the planet now, but my humanity as human. And now inside of this human perspective, I can get to experience my divine perspective at the same time that my humanity. To experience my divine perspective, which is the cosmic perspective inside of the human humanity, the human reality, is nothing other than the fulfillment of my human nature. It's not that something is added and something is better than another. It's that finally I get to be truly human because I get to be the image and the likeness reunited to the source of its light. That's what we have said from the beginning, that we were created in the image and the likeness. So we get to be in the fulfillment now of that reality. And it's a big deal. It's an extraordinary, fantastic deal. Because in the beginning, your mind just here, and I said, oh yeah, wonderful, sounds wonderful. And my humanity is going to become divine or whatever it is, and I'm going to be able to be a cosmic nature. But all those are really words and symbols that only are meaningful as you begin to experience what that is in yourself. And then when you experience that, when you're resting yourself, there is a moment in your being that you really freaked out momentarily because you understand in the moment that what you thought possible is now realistic. That's a big shock to the consciousness because it is a moment in which the mind, the linear mind, transcends itself and it becomes the real mind. So it is shocking because the linear mind said, oh my God, you know, all the things that I thought possibilities are really present, is reality itself. And then the mind, the linear mind, momentarily freaks out for a second because all the values, all the ideas, all the beliefs, all the things that you have made innocently thought that they were real, they begin to dissolve because there were things that we created inside of our evolutionary unfolding toward unity. So the evolutionary unfolding toward unity created many, 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 many things, but now we are in the reality itself. So it's different than the things that we projected as possibilities and unity. The real experience is always much more larger than the imagination because the experience puts it in the whole context, and the imagination projects itself into that which is, but it doesn't really truly experience that sometimes. So when it experiences, all of a sudden, the imagination becomes fulfilled as realistic, and that is when the mind becomes fully present, because the imagination doesn't just only project, it only teaches us the moment of life through the reality of life itself, because everything that you see is informative. Yeah. So then I would like to start then I would like to begin with the spirit, the third dimension. The first dimension is what it is, the Father. If we put it just simply in the Trinity, it will be the Father, because it's the light of the world. It's the reality itself, which is the known and the unknown. God is known, fully known and fully unknown. Fully known because it's the source of your being. Fully unknown because we are in the middle of the experience of experiencing God fully. God is really actually the experience of our eternal self. So in that sense, we are that thing, and we are becoming part of the light of the world, the Father. And sometimes I don't want to put it in terms of religion because we tend to categorize it, but I want you to bear with me momentarily. So I will talk about the Trinity as something that we may understand as a Catholic Church, but it never was the Catholic Church. It was the essence of our human experience, of our human self, 3 dimensions. It always, in the church, in the original liturgy of the church, has been said that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost was the holy mystery. I remember that I told you the story of my childhood when the priest told me that. And they also told me that they are inseparable. And that is called a mystery because it's very difficult for the linear mind to understand something that is inseparable and yet at the same time is fully united. Yes, so you can see how complex is the mind to think when they are inseparable and they are united. What do you mean? Drive me crazy. So what it means is that the reason they are inseparable and they are united, the Trinity, because it's the very nature of our human consciousness. It's not a belief, it's not a thought, it's an idea. It's the three aspects that make us three-dimensional beings. And it's the three aspects as human beings from which we have evolved inside of a two-dimensional, three-dimensional mind to eventually connect to the true three-dimensional mind that we are right now, which is actually 10-dimensional in its nature because it's much larger than the mystery and the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost and the Catholic Church and the Eucharist. It's not self-contained in the liturgy of the church. It is the essence from which our liturgy got created. And it's the essence from which the church itself, as an essence, is truly fulfilled now. So whatever was religious, it became fulfilled, as true with all the religions, because they are now the expression of its own essence instead of the evolving mental development of the particular idea of what that is. Yes, so we understand what the Trinity is. So the Father is the light. The Son and the Trinity is actually the whole of humanity, because the Son inside of the essence, if you want to go back to the church, is Adam, the original human being, the essence of the creation, the image and the likeness. So if we have to really think about the entire history of our human unfolding as evolutionary self, we will say that is the experience of human, the experience of the image and the likeness. So inside of the Trinity, the Son means that which is the Father or the light itself, the Son being the consciousness from which the Son has any form of meaning. Yes, the word Son doesn't have any meaning if it doesn't have an understanding of what is the consciousness that represents Son. Yeah, and then the Spirit, the Holy Spirit of life. Yes, where the church calls it Holy Spirit of life. I would like to think about the Holy Spirit to be more as a word that we can sense it now as whole, the Holy Spirit. Because the Holy Spirit was the unity between the Father, the Son, and the Spirit itself as love. So if we think about the thing itself, which is light, consciousness, which is the experience of the light, and then the Spirit, which is the love that unite the consciousness or the spirits with the source as being one entity, the three inseparable entities, they make up the moment of life, the moment of consciousness from which we humans senses ourselves as humans, and from which all physical form have developed into the fantastic formation that we call the physical world, the three-dimensional world, the planet Earth, our three-dimensional home, our bodies, our three-dimensional instrument from which we experience the planet Earth, nature that surrounds the planet and ourselves as one, the solar system from which the planet lives with all celestial bodies, the whole universe partaking of this instant in which everything is interconnected as one in this moment, in which the Sun, which is the consciousness that is everything, the light, which is that which is, and then the Spirit, which is what orchestrates everything as one, are simultaneously one. So 3 dimensions is important, or the Trinity of life, as we see it in that way, is really actually the source of our human consciousness. We are 3-dimensional beings, developed as human 3-dimensional beings, existing as 3-dimensional beings, in the planet Earth, in a 3-dimensional planet, celestial planet, and so forth. Yeah. So the Spirit, when the original idea of separation occurred from the story of the Genesis, that we all understand a little bit, or carry within ourselves or not, is that when the separation occurred and we went away from the union in order to discover through our own sense of self what that meant, the tree of life that was in the Garden of Eden became covered with the tree of good and evil. This is a favor. And when it covered with the tree of the good and evil, means that we enter consciously into the dimension. We can call it the dream of time, the dream of time. We enter the dimension in which everything has to be rediscovered through our own personal experience. Therefore, everything became what it was said in that time, the fruit of our labor. We will get back the bread of our everyday life. It means that through the fruit of our own discovery of consciousness, we come back home, where we are right now. We're back home. But now we can understand it. We can understand a little bit more about that projection, because we are home. Without being home, it will be impossible. That's the reason that the Holy Trinity always has been a mystery, even for the church, for everyone in the church. They don't know what that means. They know that it's sacred, that it's beautiful, you pray to it and so forth, but it doesn't know what it means as the reality itself in our daily moment, in our lives. So when the separation took place, the spirit of life, which always was inside of the union, the love itself, and the one who always expressing the unity of all things, also became separated in itself. But in the separation, the Holy Spirit had as its task to bring the whole process of evolutionary existence to the point of fulfillment. Because the Holy Spirit was the only one in the separation that carried within itself the knowledge of unity. It was the only one. Everybody else, the light became the light forever because it always was. The sun, if you want to put it that way, entered the realms of the dream of time, which was separated from the garden. But at the same time, separated from the garden, it never can return yet to its original state. So it was sort of a paradoxical. We as humans were always the image and the likeness, but yes, as humans, we're always inside of the realm that constantly was like driving us crazy, because every time that we thought that we're going to get to a place that we can understand something, it was another loop that made us to continue with the process. So it never completed itself. So all that we had in order to be able to really get to the final point was all the studies, all the religions, all the practice, all the experiences of life, all the civilizations, all the books, all the philosophies, all the different stages that in some degree were constantly impelling us to the completion of the voyage, that it was going to occur someday, but we didn't know when. Yes? According to the philosophical forefathers, it will be a very, very long voyage. And as I said, it was very complex because it was predicted that it was going to occur when the whole of humanity became enlightened. In another form of saying, when the whole of humanity and its individuality will become present with the reality of who we really are outside of the dream of time. Yeah, outside of the dream means the idea that we keep, as it was said by the Indian philosophers and by different masters, that we keep appearing on the planet, sometimes remembering part of our essence, sometimes not remembering at all. But we always came here to really trying to figure it out, what happiness is, what consciousness and God is, and how can we reconnect to a sense of life that encompasses a larger spectrum of our intelligence, our love, and our physical experience. Because our life in the planet Earth was very lovely, but very short. As I said before, we live short times. The farthest we can go is through our own personal accomplishments. And then there was time that, according to the genetical code or something, we began to start disappearing into the veils of time, and it begins to go away, and then it begins to prepare for the transition into what we call death, or going to a higher life. So that was the only thing that we could do as humans through time. So we could never get to a point before the consciousness in which we could understand that we can be fully present with everything, and life and death was not separated inside of our own consciousness. What I mean by that our consciousness can exist in the realms of eternity at the same time that it exists in the realms of time. And then we can live in a higher spectrum of mind, love, and presence that then encompasses all aspects of our being, because we can experience not only the essence of our humanity, which always has been the entire voyage, but also encompasses the cosmic connection to the greater mind that we are right now. But thirdly, encompasses the very essence that each of us is. Because the very essence that each of us is then encompasses our human evolutionary self, which is the entire genetical code, if you may, of human, but also encompasses the entire vision of our cosmic self. But those two things only mean something if they have the third one, which is you, me, us, the third one. So that's what the 3 dimensions means, that you get to have the whole past, the whole future, and the present now as a whole field of consciousness in which we are partaking of eternal life, if you may. Using that word, eternal life means the life that corresponds, the moment in the life that correspond to the existence of all universal existence. Not to only my life in the planet Earth as an individual self, but the whole spectrum, yeah? So the spirit was the one in the process of evolution that it was in charge to inspire the entire evolutionary creation to eventually make sure they will return back home. So it was an enormous amount of work of the spirit, because the spirit have to take an extraordinary voyage of time. Remember that the number one thing in the evolutionary nature of our existence is that every single human being was the source itself. It was not just, an abstract projection. And therefore we have freedom of will. Remember the word freedom of will. What that means, that every single human being that forever existed was its own identity inside of its own freedom. And because of that, the spirit was an enormous amount of work, because the spirit have to respect the freedom of every single being at the same time that it can guide it. All civilizations, all ideas, all philosophies, all religions, all aspects of unfolding into some degree of sanity that eventually could really, out of their own essential sanity, match the moment. And I think it's in August 86, when the moment became one moment, one unity itself. So it was an enormous, enormous, enormous amount of the spirit. Now, the spirit in each of us is actually that which is always, always impelling us toward the light. And it has many, many interpretations about it. Impelling us to the light means that the part of myself that is always trying to understand what is my existence as human, living in a planet suspended in the sky, surrendered by celestial existence, existing inside of a field that is sort of a confusion, because there are thousands and thousands of interpretations. And yet, that with the promise that I will be able to find my way and be able to recover myself, my sanity, my existence, my connection to God, and my understanding of what is it that I'm doing in the planet Earth surrounded by stars. So it's a lot, for most of us it's a lot, because for most of us humans, we only have certain moments that we spend in that reality, because we have to get the children, we have to send it to school, we got to get the job, we got to clean the house, we have to cut our nails, we have to go shopping, we have to go to the movies, we have to have a good time, we have to really attend thousands and thousands of things, that those things are secondary, if you may, because we don't have time for that most of the time. Yes, most of the time, That's what before it used to call samsara, the state of reality in which everything that surrounds us has more importance to ourselves out of the necessity of time or whatever it is, more importance than the very thing itself that we came here on the planet to do, which is to find ourselves and find the true reality existing within all things. Yeah, that's what we came here to do. But we forgot, as children, I told you, we recognized it. Then for our parents and life itself, we began trying to belong to whatever is being said. And we began sort of the word condition is not a good word, but begin to assimilate instead of a life pattern. And then we can fall in love. We find our own creative form, our work. We find a family. We start owning things in order to be able to feel secure, belong to certain parts of society, they support our beliefs, and so on and on and on and on. And then we are back into a system that we are all participating in it, but it's a little bit, in some degree, in our evolution, was a little bit like a distraction, because it was always, by the time you get to one point, you would like to have the other one. By the time you enter the world completely, you would like to be to the spirit. By the time you get to the spirit and meditate in the mountain for a few weeks, you got to go back to life because you need to make your life and so forth. So we were always inside of 1,000 systems that were constantly calling us into different directions. So this is to tell you how difficult it was for the spirit, but it was a wonderful job for the spirit, because the spirit was the one that created all the symbols, just think about the Egyptians. The Egyptians, one of the oldest that we can remember, because most of them were under, in our remembrance, the civilization that were very evolved because they have a very connected to nature in our Egyptian civilization. And then they knew, for example, that the pyramids, the very, very thing that they built, was almost like an observatory, and that in the top of the pyramid there will be a time of the year in which they will be connected in the celestial bodies and be able to receive the light from which the priest will then be able to, through the entire year, assist the people to be able to be connected to their essence. So that was fantastic in that sense, when you think about it, how evolved we were, because the Egyptians were the first people who thought that we have only one God. Until then, as humans, we thought mostly about worship many things, but we didn't have a thought yet that the one God could exist as monotheism, the one force. Yes. So that was a labor of the spirit. Just think about and then the Egyptians inside of the mind, thinking about it, they would like to be able to preserve their lives. We as Egyptians preserve our lives and become embalmed in order to wait for the moment in which we can return to eternity and therefore recover our physical body to be able to exist once again. Sounds like a lot, very simplistic in many ways, but also very inspired in the thought, the idea, you know what I mean? Remember that our humanity was so simple that the idea that I'm going to be able to live in life thereafter, and I'm going to be able to really actually maintain my physical body to return to life itself. So anyway, that's really what happened now. We are the embodiment of the Egyptian in the eternal moment, the eternity, not as something that you're going to recover in another dimension, but in the present moment. But in that time was a lot. So I tell you about what the spirit was created, even though that it was complex, even though the Egyptians in some ways, because of the different stages that we created as humans in temporal hierarchy, remember that once they have the people who build the actual temples in which people got buried, they kill everybody who worked in the temple, because they will be the only way that it will be secure, that all the artifacts and everything will stay safe. So at the same degree that in our humanity, we have a lot of exalted ideas about one God and living after death and preserves ourselves, we're very, very basic in the idea of just killing the very person that did the things to save us. So just to show you how complex was the evolutionary part of our mind, that in certain parts was very exalted in some way and very, very basic at its nature, because he couldn't understand unity. He couldn't understand yet the reality of celestial existence, which is unity within unity. So anyway, they're telling you this story just to show you the spirit. The spirit then going into the Greeks and awakening for the first time in their minds of the Greeks, the idea that structure has a certain laws of formation that when you respect them and begin to what it was called classic proportions, that you can begin to have a sense that the physical formation matched at some degree the celestial formation. So that was a fantastic. Hermes Trismegistus, remember all the entities that it came in that time, all the philosophers that it came with the Platonic solids, all those were expressions of the spirit awakening our human consciousness, the highest level of intelligence, if you may, in order to be able to advance the human creation to the point that eventually can return home. So that was a part of it. So that was the level of the spirit. Everything that you see in the museums that is come from the different civilizations were brought by the spirit as the creativity in man. But it wasn't a superimposition upon man. It wasn't, the spirit was not superimposing Pythagoras about his philosophical ideas. It's that Pythagoras was also the essence of his own humanity, because he was a human. And in the humanity, it was unfolding the very notion, the very knowledge, the very perspective that it was himself. So the level of the spirit was to awaken in every single human being the very latent essence that will bring the spirit back home, which is where we are right now. Yes. So then, just briefly, from the Egyptians, we went to the Greeks, which is the perfect proportions, and then we went to the Romans, in which the Romans then incorporated the Egyptian sort of a perception of everything in the classic proportions, and they make it closer to life. The Roman Empire makes it, everything becomes like sexy, if you may, alive, full form. Everything became rococo. The idea of experiencing life itself into another form. The entire formation of the Christian church and the entire formation of all the religions was also the label of the spirit, each interpreted inside of their own sense, their own culture. Yes. So at the same time that all those extraordinary projections of spirit, goodness, form, mathematics, intelligence, everything was evolving, was very, very complex, because each civilization, each religion, each interpretation, it was separated from everything else. So it wasn't a cohesive understanding that it was one thing. So we were very split in the evolutionary nature. Yes. Remember that we have the Catholics, and we have the Jewish tradition, then we have the Buddhist, and then we have the Indian tradition, and then we have the Islamic tradition, and all of them created their own interpretation through the spirit of what that is. But then it was very difficult to put them together into one, because it was almost impossible. Yeah, that's the reason that we have until today in our physical world, in some way, we are in conflicts between one religion and the other one. Everybody's saying, no, I am the one who has God, and everything else is a little bit of distortion of everything else. And someday when they get their place together, they're going to be able to do it, and so forth. So it became very, very, the freedom, the freedom of will became so complex, that eventually created the whole scenario in 1986, when the science awakening, because we said in our human experience that perhaps science will be the one that will unite all the religions, because it will be very difficult to unite all the religions, because what happens is that each religion became a monument within itself. It became a system within itself. So the Catholic Church became an extraordinary system that lives in Rome with all the curia and all the the priestess and all the books and all the different formations of hierarchy, that they were completely separated from the daily day of our lives. They don't exist in the physical life. We became like the little people with the larger people up there. The same with the Jewish tradition. It became so extraordinary, perfect inside of their devotion, that then the human life of the Jewish people became something else. The same began with the Buddhists, that the Buddhist tradition, Buddha created this enormous system about the Dharma. But then you have all those different stages in which you have to really transcend the human malady of your consciousness in order to get there. And the same occurring with the garden of Krishna, in which the very tradition of the Hindu became separated into thousands of castes of people who belong to different castes, and then it can never become one because it's impossible to unite the castes because of the different stages of evolutionary consciousness in which the caste projected its own wellness of its own beingness. Yeah, and then the Islamic tradition too, beautiful. The Islamic tradition understood, Muhammad understood in the Enlightenment, because every tradition came as a result of a moment of enlightenment. So Muhammad and Enlightenment understood perfect geometry and perfect light, perfect connection of light. And then that's the buildings, all the domes and everything. But at the same time, through the process of safeguarding the religion, it created this extraordinary dogmatic that the rest of the world are infidels and they are the only ones who hold the light. So we understood through many, many processes of time and the unfolding of the spirit, it will be almost impossible to reunite the religions, because in order to preserve their essence, they became unavailable between each other and between the world itself. So it was impossible. So we said as humans that maybe science will be the one that will bring us home, because as I said, religion became so preoccupied with maintaining the essence that they lost it in some degree, because the very essence of who we are could never be safeguarded, could never be self-contained, because it's the moment in life of our own existence. So in all that aspects of evolution, which was divinely inspired by the spirit, became distorted when we thought that we needed to preserve it. And inside of the evolutionary interpretation, we did need to interpret it, to protect it. Because our forefathers thought that the only way that you keep the wisdom and you keep the reality as essence, to be able to allow humanity to eventually to come back home. But the problem is that the very thing that we were protected was separating us from the very thing that we were. So that is the reason then science, when discovered quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement, and then quantum physics, that for the first time, the human mind became interpreted inside of the heavens, inside of the actual idea and reality of the heaven itself. So when quantum entanglement came into being, for the first time, what the traditions were talking forever became realistic, because through the different trials and errors, the science discovered that everything in the universe is instantaneously and atomically one, and is everything interrelated. So as you know, you have this video that talks about it, and it's very wonderful to watch it any once in a while, because even though it is fantastic, it bypasses, because the very mind that understood quantum entanglement couldn't understand what was the use for it, because the scientific mind, not having a religious mind, could not understand that the very nature of quantum entanglement is the reality of your life. So again, the mind wants to say, okay, everything is related, but we don't know how to use it. And so it became, you know very well that in the very video that we were talking about quantum entanglement and quantum mechanics, the reason that we went into trying to find quantum entanglement was because in the laws of society as it exists, it was impossible to keep anything safeguarded from the hackers. Nothing could really be safeguarded, really. So the mind could not really find peace to safeguard the secrets of atomic secrets and all the banks and all the things. So it got inspired inside of a crazy idea that ended up being the salvation, or not salvation, ended up being the completion of the voyage, because the very thing they were looking for, to safeguard everything, proved to the people that everything can never be safeguarded because it's ever present. So, but the whole use of quantum entanglement was to create a new system that nobody can hack it, because it is impossible to get to it. So I don't know how they're going into that one right now, because they just discovered the important part of quantum entanglement is that everything is simultaneously interconnected as one. And I suspect that that was the very thing that completed, along with the entire evolutionary nature of the spirit unfolding, they completed the moment in which everything became simultaneously one. Our human evolution have created all the scenario of consciousness that eventually could end their projection to trying to find home, that finally united with home. When they united with home, when we united at home, it was complex because we were in the presence of a new mind. Not the mind that is looking for home, but the mind that is home itself. So it became very complex because our entire mind was evolving inside of a search. And reality now was inside of the found. So it was the experience of our essential nature, interconnected humanly, cosmically, and realistically as self, and the new reality of presence, which is the moment of our unfolding life. So it's a completely new mind, because it doesn't exist inside of its own self-created search, but exists inside of its own all-knowing, founded state of home. So the spirit, in the moment of the harmonic conversions, for the first time, it completed his task. The spirit finally said, oh my God, I'm home. And the spirit was always, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, it was always home. But in our experience, we're not. We didn't know what that was, never existed. So the completion of the voyage of the Trinity, with the Trinity became again the Trinity itself. Not the Trinity as an interpretation of the three inseparable unilateral beings, but the Trinity of three dimensions, which is what always was, the Trinity from which our consciousness, as consciousness, began to manifest as in our existence. So it is the source. We are a Trinity. I am my human self, I am my cosmic self, and I'm Christian, myself. That's who I am. And it's the same with each of us. We are male and female, if you want to put it that way, without going into an enormous discussion about the sexes, but we are male and female synchronized as the essence of our being. That's the reason that right now, many beings, they don't know if they're male or female yet or whatever it is, and they have all the freedom to be who they are without thinking, oh, I have to behave a certain way, I have to behave in another way. But you can see how complexity that became inside of the system itself. So what I wanted to say is that for the first time, the spirit became the reality of unity for us. And when the spirit becomes the reality of unity for the first time, we understood what three dimension was. And we were the very thing that the spirit was, that we were three-dimensional. Therefore, in three dimensions, we are connected to everything, because everything is three dimensions. We are partaking of a movement of unity, which is actually fourth dimension. And we are actually inside of a completely new field of consciousness that sees everything from the perspective of home, as I said, instead of the consciousness sees everything from in looking out, trying to figure it out, how do I get home? So it was completely different field. It became the fulfillment of the spirit. And the spirit became fulfilled. The Son became fulfilled, which is us, forever. And then the Father became fulfilled forever, because the three were always one, and there'll always be one forever. And the three entities are indispensable for there to be light, or for there to be life, or for there to be anything. You need three things to be one, period. So anyway, that is the voyage of the spirit. So I'm going to stop for a few seconds, just to relax for an instant, and then I'll continue with it. If there's any questions before I continue with it.
So Christian, there was
yeah.
a question that came in from Cynthia on the chat.
Oh, how wonderful.
And it says, can science reveal the interconnection and the interdependence to reunite all religions in unity and appreciate universal harmony?
I think that now science, of course, science is inside of a new picture right now, inside of the new consciousness, but it's a little bit complex because the science mind was so directed into one thing that it sees it all from the perspective of having to be proof. And when you see something to trying to be proof, you're creating the doubt inside of the reality, because you superimpose the very nature of your mind to everything that you study. But mind, answering Cynthia, yes, science is entering now the reality of being able to unite the consciousness. Perhaps I couldn't say more than religion, because religion is also transforming itself, because the religion is dissolving. All the religions are dissolving inside of the reality of fulfillment. So I don't know what's going to happen when that reality becomes dissolving fulfillment, because the liturgy will disappear, because the liturgy was innocently clouded by the idea of religion into some idea of sin. So it is impossible to have sin in the new consciousness, because we are in the fulfillment of our human existence. And fulfillment cannot be sin, because whenever you interpret a sin in any way in yourself, you create the sinners outside of yourself. And then you judge the sinners, and then your mind gets completely disturbed and fragmented. And then you get to have the proof of the complexity in life itself. So all that is disappearing. All that is disappearing. But in their disappearance, they are becoming honor and fulfillment. They're becoming honor and fulfilled. It's not that we cannot, but the new consciousness doesn't have any judgment. So what that means is that the very intelligence in which it bases its perception of unity cannot entertain the idea that there is judgment or others, because it's made up of all understanding. The new consciousness understands everything, as everything, feels everything. It's the mind, it's the greater mind that knows all things. And we are all becoming acquainted with it. So the more acquainted we become with it, the less judgment we are, because we understand that all things that they were created in some form of confusion were made as a consequence of the very confusion of the search that eventually prompted the fulfillment. So all religions melt into the moment of life. All science will unite. We can see what science is doing right now. Science right now, for example, in this moment, created a vaccine in less than a year. Yes, because science discovered that instead, and I think I told you before this, science discovered that in order to create a vaccine, before we used to think that we needed to bring into the body of the person the very thing that the disease was originating from. So we were vaccinated ourselves with the very thing that it was producing the sickness. And science discovered that instead of doing that, we now can comprehend the system to a degree that we can instruct the system to be able to embrace, or they will use another word, they will use repel, but I will say to be able to really become neutralized, whatever external wants to come in, neutralize it, and therefore you didn't need to go through the whole internal battle that occur by trying to cure something with the very disease that you're trying to free the person from. Just to show you how extraordinary the science is evolving into fantastic things. Yeah. So can create everything instantaneously. Now they have the science right now in this moment, they have an essential foundation from which you can create, according to what they say, which I have no reason not to believe it, that according to what they say, they have the foundation to create very soon the cure for all kinds of diseases, because they will be able to tap in the body the very thing that the body already have, to be able to be free from that very thing that seemingly externally wants to penetrate the body. So it's fantastic. Just to answering that question, science, very possible. The only complexity that we have, not complexity, let me just put it, it's delicate, because the scientific mind was in a specialization in our evolution, just as the religious mind was in a specialization, just like the spirited part of ourselves was in a specialization, just like the pragmatic interpretation of physicality was in a specialization. And each specialization was self-contained inside of its form, and it became like it couldn't merge with everything because it was specialized. The difference now is that the very specialization is dissolving into the presence of unity. So everything is dissolving into everything else. And I will say, yes, the science will be the one that it will unite us. And the science can unite us very quickly if linked to the understanding that the mind interprets everything, and whatever the mind interprets is what the person is becoming. So whatever I see is what I am becoming. And in the beginning, it sounds like nothing. But then when you understand, oh, I see. If I see something that I judge, or something that is ugly, or something that I consider to be terrible, or something that I consider sinful, my mind is photographing the very thing that I'm thinking, and I'm becoming the very thing that I'm thinking. Even though I'm thinking that I'm neutral, that I see everything neutral and everything else is becoming by itself. No, everything is becoming through the creation of our own mind. When the new consciousness happens to understand is that whatever you see is what you get. But it's complex, because you can say it, you see it from the perspective of judgment, and I say, well, now I have to be careful what I see. It's not that. The new consciousness doesn't see things from the perspective of judgment. It doesn't exist inside of the new consciousness. Has no judgment. It is the intelligence of its own wholeness. But so when we understand it, when we begin to understand it, we begin to really realign, if you may, our mind to these principles, this connection of wholeness. And then it's not that we start projecting bad things to anything. It's that we understand that the creation of our own being is totally determined to our presence with life. Because now life, for the first time, is actually the creation of its own perfection. Before, in our evolutionary nature, the actual relative moment in which we were living consciousness was recreating itself in order to find a way out. Now, we are not recreating ourselves to find a way out. We are recreating ourselves to be connected with what it is. So the idea of getting out is no longer existent. We are not separated between the in and the out. We are fully connected inside of the creation of existence. So we are inside of a new mind that I said before is 100% benign, because it's not made inside of the evolutionary conceptual disseminations of thought based in differentiation, excuse me, centralized in duality and the idea of good and evil. That's the reason that we are back in the tree of life, as it was, because the garden of good and evil got disconnected. We are inside of the tree of life. We are inside of the physics of existence. We are not inside of the projection of the confused time. So it is complex to talk about this a little bit, because in religion, in religion, the base that we evolved inside of religion was to what was saintly and what was sinful, what was of God and what was of God of illusion, what was samsara and what was realistic. So all those creations, what is still created in that. So many of us carry innocently a lot of ideas of behavior that they are based in sin. We don't even know it. It's like embedded racism. Remember when we talk about embedded racism, that we're all racist, but we don't know that we're racist. Say, no, I'm not racist. I have my best friends are black, or my best friends are blah, blah, blah. They don't understand that the racism was existing inside of our genetical code, because that is the way that we innocently evolve in time to preserve our kind and to protect ourselves from others, which we thought it was necessary because they will take the very thing that it was our sustainment. Yes, we were coming from a very basic state. Yes. So everything, the other was really dangerous because it will take over our culture, our family, our money, our survival, our work, our women, our children, our war, blah, 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 all of it. So it was embedded inside of the consciousness. So it is complex because the new consciousness doesn't have a behavior. It only has its perfection of intelligence, love, and physical reality of unity, but they are based on the engagement of existence. They are not subject to the degradational nature in which the mind senses itself as good in relation to evil. So it's very difficult. It's a lot because, that's where we were made in that sense. So, but now we're different in that sense. So anyway, we are inside now of it. So it's the reason that I said it's difficult to talk about behavior, because immediately when the mind think about behavior, it said, oh, that's something that I need to really find out how to use it, because I have to become good, or I have to become present, or I have to become forgiving, or I have to become let me see, what words can I use? All the ideas that were created in time that I have to become are not what it is. Because what you are is the essence of those things. So when you're trying to become it, you distort them innocently, because you bring to it the idea that you become that in order to protect or to change something, that it becomes crystallized by the very nature of that awareness. So that's the reason that we are now in the presence of our God self, because our God self is the totality of our natural perfection. And our natural perfection is, of course, being present, because we are connected to everything. Yeah, we are the light of the world, because the light that we see is the light that we are. Everything that we see is light, as you know in that paper. We are consciousness, because our mind is not divided anymore into anything. It's actually the mind that is intelligence manifested itself as creation. The mind, consciousness, that is mind, that is intelligent, manifesting itself as creation. So it's different. We are the spirit because we are the fulfillment of the spirit. Unity is the national being. So we are the new consciousness because we are the moment itself. Because remember that in the evolutionary nature of our consciousness, the moment never was actualized as being the quantum entanglement of all things. The moment was interpreted from the perspective of quantum mechanics. So the moment was always something that we're not even aware of, that we go from one thing to another. Now the moment is actually the union of all things. Yeah, the moment itself. We are synchronized inside of the universal clock, in which the natural moment, the electrical moment in which our consciousness manifests thought or awareness is simultaneous with life itself. Therefore, we are inside of the physics of life. Life is no longer a projection or an idea outside of ourselves. We are the life itself. So it's completely different in that sense. So, and what I'm saying is that the beauty, for example, one of the aspects of the consciousness beauty is actually the natural awareness that occurs inside of the new consciousness. Everything is beautiful because it is totally related to you. It's not something you're observing it to see if you like it or not like it. No, it has its own story in it. And what you experience and everything is the story that inspire its manifestation. And then inside of the story, you transform it if it's something that you don't like it because it's no longer as beautiful as it could be, or you forgive it because you recognize that it was a nice creation and eventually will dissolve inside into a new creation. It's something that is happening with a natural creativity. You make a house and you create a house and you decorate it. And then when you decorate the house, decorated means you put all the things in the house that they are meaningful to you. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, I don't know if I have this here. I love it, but it's not really what it is. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, I need to change it because I need to be with everything now instead of just this object. And then when you put this new object there, everything else began to show up because they were waiting forever for you to change this thing in the room. And you recognize that everything is like that everything, it has its own natural harmony and beauty that it becomes actualized as you begin to see it with the eyes of beauty itself. Now, the new consciousness is the eyes of beauty itself. The new consciousness is the eye of nature, and so forth. So what I'm telling you is that the 10 dimensions is the fullest spectrum of the consciousness, seeing everything from the perspective of renewal into the empowering nature of creation. Renewal. Everything is renewal. Everything that you see comes accompanied with its own solution. It doesn't have a problem. It may be actualized as a problem because you have to decide about what that is. But whatever you're going to connect always is going to be what it is because that's the function of the new consciousness. So poverty will disappear from the planet completely. Yeah, non-learning will disappear from the planet because everything will be known more and more. And whatever we teach, it will be to tell everybody everything that you need to know is known. But now, if you would like me to teach you how to create a bicycle, I'll teach you. You know, you can even go to the computer and find out how to make it right now already. You know what I mean? Everything is about learning whatever it is that you will need to know in order to accomplish the natural creativity that is the nature of your essence.
So, Christian?
Yes, darling.
So you're saying, like when you said about the one thing in the room and you moved it, is that like the synchronization of everything falling?
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
all right.
When you're thinking about it, the way that the new consciousness came into being, the easiest way to understand it is like a puzzle, you know, like a big puzzle that you put on a table. Yeah. And then what happens is that as consciousness and religion and science and philosophy were approximating, we're all sometimes crazy, you know, because they was all inside of the separation. Things inside of separation were necessary for the union. But in the process of separation, were very complex because it kept spiraling sometimes into a labyrinth. So when you're thinking about it, you add this, and now you add this, you thought that this piece was supposed to be there. I say, no, let's go here. And then, oh, I see, it's really good. But now all this place, oh, this place goes here, and this goes here. And then in the last minute, the last thing that you say, eureka, bah, that's it. The whole vision of the whole puzzle came to being. And that was the moment of the convergence in which the whole puzzle came into being. That was the instant, yeah.
But that instant, sometimes don't you look like, oh my gosh, it was right there in front of me the whole time.
Well, of course, it was always present, but if the mind cannot see it inside of the whole spectrum yet, in evolution, it will be impossible. Because when you cannot see it inside of the whole spectrum, you interpret it inside of the pieces that you don't have yet. And when you interpreted everything inside of the pieces that you don't have yet, the interpretation is never complete because you are projecting the very things that you are lacking, if you may, momentarily, into the very things that you are perceiving.
And so, like you said, everything needs to fall in place and synchronize, and then the whole beautiful thing comes together.
Exactly. So that
Beautiful.
is the way that it became together. Yes, like a puzzle. Yeah. So anyway, that's what it was. But it's what I'm trying to tell you. Remember when I was showing you the symbol of the spheres and all the spheres that I'm showing you, and then I show you how duality began to manifest itself. And we're going to do that next time again, because I would like to hold the graphics and add the graphics, more graphics, in order to make it more linear for you to understand it. But when duality begins to manifest the puzzle, every time there's something got added, it had an advantage and disadvantage. It had an advantage in which it was closer to the completion, but it had a disadvantage because it created a whole disarray of new interpretations. And each interpretation escalated into something else. It's like when you are in a family, understand when you're in a family and you're having and everybody has different ideas about everything. And then you have to really figure it out, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I see. And then sometimes you just have to let it go because it will be impossible, because when we hear words inside of our consciousness, we don't hear the word. We hear the content in which our mind experience what is and think of what is being said. It's the content in which our mind experience what we think that is being said, not necessarily what it is, because the very reflexes in which we are experiencing our mind are manifesting the awareness from which we judge what is occurring. Yeah. So it can become complex then, because you think that what is occurring is what is occurring, but in reality, it's not what is occurring. It's what you're making that to be what is occurring, what you think that is occurring, most of the time. Not all the time, because that's what the generalization. So that becomes very complex. That's the reason that it was so complex. One of the arts of evolutionary existence was therapy. All the different psychological therapies, trying to get somebody to be sane inside of a field that is crazy, so to speak. Yeah, like the idea. That I think that it was one like who was the philosopher, the first science and psychology that it was. Jung is the one who think about the self. Yeah, it was the first one who thought about the self. So he was trying to figure it out, not all those problems about all the confusion that occur in their life, but how we can get it to a place that the person can relate and discover themselves. Because most of the other philosophies inside of psychology were to be designed, rightly so, inside of evolution, how get the person to function in society. You know what I mean? How you get the person to live in a world that it can more or less function. You can work and do this, but not have a family, not to create so many trouble, because you're gonna jump everything, the relationship, function in society. So we didn't have that psychology is a science that eventually will disappear with the new consciousness, because it wouldn't exist. There will be no problem that is not known by the very moment of life. And the person will be able to really find all solutions, because all problems ultimately exist in the natural confusion of what love is, for our interpretation of love, relationship, consciousness, everything is all interpreted inside of that. So anyway, you can't put it down, because it's very important that we understand that we are not putting everything down, because to judge something is not to understand the importance of its existence and the fulfillment that brought about to us to be the new consciousness. So all were fantastic. Yeah. As a matter of fact, there is I don't know if you all have Netflix. Yeah. Did you watch that series that is called Sigmund Freud? I think it is what it is, right? I think it is a special, it's small, it's only 7 or 8 shows. And it's wonderful to watch it. because it depicts Freud as being somebody that for the first time as a psychologist recognized that all the people who were in the crazy house were becoming more crazy by being in the crazy house. And there is no way they can cure them, because the augmentation of the madness became more and more spiraling. So he didn't know what to do with it. And in the whole five or six shows are about his transformation inside of himself, trying to figure it out, how I can liberate all these people and himself as well, because he was also a victim inside of his own interpretation as a psychologist. And it's fantastic because the acting is wonderful. And it's not fully realized in it, but it's wonderful to look at it and very enlightening, because it will show you just the difficulty of being able to trying to find some sense of sanity within a field that it was all insane, you know. But the only way we can understand now, because now we're finally being in the sanity space, when new consciousness is sane. So you can understand that insanity doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad. It's just the confused premises have created an enormous confusion to the human mind, in which the human mind didn't have no possibility inside of the dream to be able to hunker itself or herself to a place in which you can really be connected to life as to what it is, the extraordinary magic of creativity and well-being and beauty. So we were all trapped inside of our own personal experience inside of it. But it was a natural thing because of the free will. It was a natural thing because it brought us home. And it's a natural thing because now we can see it in its whole and love it and assist everyone by the very nature that we're talking about right now. A lot of people in the planet are becoming better because they are no longer relating to the sickness of being something wrong, of recognizing it's something that is becoming clear within their own consciousness. We are all becoming free from the mind that interpreted confusion. Yeah. So anyway, so then what I wanted to say, the difficulty is the complex talk about the new consciousness in terms of behavior, because it doesn't have behavior. It is what it is. Yeah. So then that's what freedom is. If you are self-conscious about your behavior, you are imprisoned inside of your own judgment, innocently. But in the freedom of the new consciousness, you are not imprisoned inside of your own judgment. You are the freedom of knowing that everything that you think, feel, and do is always perfect. Always perfect, because your intentions are 100% beautiful. And then if you discover that something is not beautiful in your intentions, you'll change it right away, because it's not going to, it's actually a fragment in your mind. It's a place in your mind, the hall of mirrors, that is not acting properly. So you go to that hall of mirrors and say, you need to change that one, because you gave me innocent, complex answers that produces anxiety, produces, it doesn't let me be free. Freedom is a natural result of your consciousness being present and present, being in the presence and being present with your essence. Freedom is the natural result of your being in the present and present with your essence. Look at all those words that I said. It's the moment itself. So it's 8 words or something to what it is, but you can understand it. Freedom is the natural result. So we are becoming, the new consciousness is free in us all the time. And when your consciousness becomes free, it's fantastic, because you are in the presence of magic. What you see is always magical, because it's constantly changing, it's constantly beautiful, it's constantly informative, it's constantly to fulfill you, it's constantly guides you to the next place that it will be even more beautiful. You'll constantly get to know more aspects of your humanity, your intelligent self as cosmic, and your essence as self, which is beyond any of those things, because my essence as self is quantum entanglement. In quantum entanglement is the presence itself inside of the whole field, manifesting itself inside of the whole field, but as an individual aspect. So it's not that I am in the soup, inside of the soup. I am the essential manifestation of all possibilities of perception, awareness, and taste that exists within the soup. Yes? So it's important because you have to remember all the time that the only thing, that the only treasure that was given to you, it was you, because you are all there is. And therefore, coming back home is nothing else than recovering all the natural senses within your senses that allows you to live inside of that fountain of information. That you get to be the God, you get to be consciousness experiencing yourself as God. Yeah, it's difficult to use that word because say, okay, experiencing like God, I'm going to be walking with a scepter all day long, and say, you stay, you go away, you have to behave. No, God doesn't have that. God is actually the existence of your own breath, of my own breath. It's not existent outside of it. So anyway, it's fantastic. That's what I wanted to tell you. So, so today was really about the spirit, And you know the spirit, how wonderful, especially if you begin to comprehend that the spirit have taken many different forms. You've taken the form of the American Indians, for example. Just think about the spirit, because the American Indians was the first one for us in our culture. They didn't have the past or the future. Remember the spirit, they called the spirit the moment, actually. So they were, you know, they were in another level of mind because they were more connected to nature, yeah? But so all aspects of our evolutionary self were inspired by the spirit. But what the spirit was not allowed to do ever was to superimpose its sense of unity upon our own individuality. Freedom. Just listen to what I'm saying. What the spirit, knowing the entire sense of unity at the same time that it was unfolding inspiration toward that unity, was never allowed to be for one instant to superimpose to other an idea based on unity that it was not truly coming from the natural freedom of the self. Can you imagine how fantastic it is? That how fantastic the spirit is, that knowing the perfection of everything could never say, oh no, you got to do this because that's the perfection of everything. That it will say, okay, that's what you're thinking about. Okay, I'm with it. I'll take you out the best I can, but it has to be inside of you. It cannot be inside of it. So it was the process. The spirit was the most divine essence of unity, because even though it knew the completion of unity, could never superimpose it, ever. And therefore, it has to branch into thousands and billions and billions and billions of awareness and perception, waiting until the moment that the last perception will fit the puzzle. And then the spirit will come back home because have fulfilled its task. And its task, and the spirit was to maintain unity among all separation. It was fantastic. Can you imagine more love than everything? Just show you. I mean, talking about motherhood as a spirit, because the mother, you know, when you're a mother, sometimes you want to say, oh no, you got to do this because I know what is best for you. Even if you don't know it right now, you got to do that. The spirit could never do that. Yeah, you'll say, no, whatever you're doing is great, but you know, or whatever. But it's another possibility or something. There will be another way of saying it. They will farther along the interpretation, but it will never be able to have righteousness because the spirit was without righteousness. Unity is without righteousness. It only has unity. And therefore, because of the spirit united back the whole voyage, the son, which is the second aspect, for the first time, is now the prodigal son. Cosmic, not just only human, because all of it is finally the prodigal son. And the father, for the first time, is the father of everything, the light of everything. So not only through the process of evolution, fulfill our human experience, we have fulfilled the original Trinity as well. Because the original Trinity was also in some degree separated if we were separated. All of it became united. So it was a divine happening. And the divine happening manifested the fourth dimension, which is now where we're going to go the next time, the fourth dimension, which is the new consciousness, the 10 dimensions and so forth, but it manifested what we call the new life, the new world in which we are living now. Yeah. So it is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, but stay within the spirit. Because now every time that you see like you know, it was so lovely. I was in San Francisco many years ago, and I was teaching in San Francisco, and in the window was hanging in the window of the room that I'm staying. It was the dream catcher. You know, remember the dream catcher with all the feathers and everything. And then when I saw the dream catcher, I said, oh, the dream catcher is actually the geometry of light. I said, of course, it's actually the mandala of all things. All the mandalas are synthesized in the dream catcher. And I said, oh, of course, the dream catcher is nothing other than catching the moment inside of the whole consciousness. The American Indian knew what that was, the catching of the moment. Yes, that's it. You know, it was fantastic. So anyway, everything is in a spiritual in that sense, because it's made up inside of a symbol projected in time for us to understand it now at the celebration of its completion. So all the symbology of time, everything that it was, you know, remember the flower of life, even the tree of life. Remember the 19 flowers of life. All the symbology that got created through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, it became fulfilled in the moment by ourselves. So you are, each of us is the celebration and fulfillment of that part of ourselves who created that symbol to greet us now in this moment of time, to be able to see it from the perspective of wholeness. So no longer it is seen as the occult or as a symbol that self-contains in a specialization of consciousness, but it's actually a symbol of unity that it was created maybe thousands of years ago for to be seen now as a celebration of the natural existence of all things inside of unity. Perfection. Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. So the spirit is divine, don't you think? I love the spirit. Yeah. But I love the sun because I am the sun and you are the sun. The sun is all humanity, all of humanity. Everything is the sun. And then the light is all the rest, you know, all the rest. And all together is the nature of all things. When we get to nature, we have a lot to talk about when we get to whole nature, because whole nature is the natural manifestation of the speck of form manifesting itself as human and as form to be able to reflect the light from which we can understand unity. Fantastic. Yeah. Wonderful. So anyway, it's 4:30. If it's anything that we have a few minutes, a few seconds more, anything, we never got to any movement, to any talk about the emotions today, but I think we did pretty good, don't you think?
It's amazing.
I give myself, you know, because what I'm talking is kind of a difficult, because at any one moment, you can interpret me like being completely crazy, but I'm not. I'm completely sane. So I have to, you know, it's kind of, you know what I mean? It is like something like this. I'm completely crazy. No, I am completely sane. But what I'm saying is so far out in relation to its instantaneous understanding of unity that may innocently get interpreted that I am a little bit outside of it, but I'm not. So anyway, it's complex, but I'm really giving myself a lot of, what would be the way? A lot of points. Let's put it that way.
We give it to you too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But I need your help. I need your help constantly, because I need you to really find out what it is that you understand, or something you don't understand, or something that you are not sure. I need you to give me the input so I can fill up any piece within the puzzle that may not just exist within your mind, that is necessary to give you the experience that is the blessing of your own self. It's a blessing. When you feel all the pieces of the puzzle, you become free because you are the whole. Absolutely. So, but maybe when you don't ask me questions, I think that everything is perfect. I'm not going to project that you need to, but I open the door. If there's anything that you need to know, or that you think that I'm not sure yet, because even when I read the things that I'm saying, or I watch the Zooms, I recognize that I make statements, sometimes not fully expressing the totality of the statement. So it doesn't doesn't give space to interpretation, that is self-explanatory. It's difficult to do that, but I know that I'm doing that. So then when I look at it and I listen, I said, well, I say something, but I'm not sure that anybody will understand it, because even I recognize that it's not fulfilling the whole vision of the mind to truly comprehend what I'm saying. But anyway, I'm learning by seeing the Zooms, what it is that I'm not really, and I get better, and I will get better, because the more closer I get to express the perfection of unity, the more fulfilled I am, because I am the very thing that I'm saying. We are the very unity.
It's all seeping in. It's all
they're all going through.
Week after week after week after week.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're getting it. We're getting it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. No, the reason that I'm saying that is because the wonderful thing about me, as an interpretation of myself, is that I am my human experience, and it's kind of dorky inside of it, because I'm coming from many different interpretations and I understand all aspects. I am my cosmic, because I've always been in some degree in the heavens trying to figure out what I was. But now I am myself, and what I am myself is much larger than any of those two. And it's fantastic, because that is the place that I'm really alive, not inside of my mind here or inside of my mind there, inside of the whole thing. So anyway, I'm really enjoying being present in the presence of myself. It's nice. So anyway, I love you. Have fun. If you have the time, read the free releases. And then if you want to, next time we can create a time and we can read a little portion of one of them and guide you through the reading, for your mind to be able to, or for our mind, let's say, instead of you, for our mind to be able to really understand the nuances that you are executing as you learn the motions. And the nuances that you're executing as you learn the motions allow your mind to be inside of you. And therefore you get to have different experiences, because the energy that you are experiencing is actually that, the interaction between your mind and the motion. That's what the energy is. The mental and the physical being united by the fluidity of the energy. And it becomes fantastic then, because see, oh, I see, I'm experiencing myself inside of myself. And it's wonderful because it teaches many things. It teaches the mind to understand the whole field of consciousness. It sends the feeling to understand energy, which is love and life. And then the physical existence becomes more present, which is present in the physical existence. Is fantastic. So anyway, I love you. Have fun. Enjoy it. I can't wait till I get to see you next time. And what else? That's it.
Thank you so much. You're doing
Right.
great.
I love it. Ciao, ciao, darling. I love
Yay.
you. Oh, one last thing. I want you to entertain the possibility when the time comes, if you would like me to do a special presentation that is not this, the Zoom, we will do a special presentation for any of you who would like to have some specific subject, and any time that you want to, for that specific subject. Yeah? This is just a thought.
Great.
Whatever you want is available. Okay? I
Wow.
love you. Have fun. Ciao, ciao. Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
All right.
Ciao, ciao. Ciao. Ciao, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Happy
Ciao, ciao.
birthday, Mary Pat.
Oh, Mary
Thank
Pat.
you.
Yay, darling. How fantastic. Mary, happy birthday, darling. What a
Tomorrow,
wonderful birthday for you. Eh? This is the most fantastic year of your life, isn't it? Yes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
shouldn't say yes. It is.
It is. It is,
Yes, it
actually.
Isn't
It's
that
good.
lovely?
Yeah.
Wow.
Tomorrow is actually it. But yeah.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
We're not going to see
You're
you.
going to start celebrating it today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day from now on.
Oh, I
Yes,
celebrate
yes.
always, you know.
Absolutely. Wonderful. It's lovely to
And
see you.
happy birthday also for Cynthia Grace. Her birthday was the 5th.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Happy
Grace.
birthday,
Oh, lovely.
Cynthia Grace.
Happy
Wow.
birthday,
So
Cynthia.
lovely.
I didn't know.
Oh, how lovely.
Wonderful.
Oh, wonderful. And Nancy Hemingway, it's so lovely to see you, darling. It's so lovely. I love you so much that you are here. It's wonderful to see you. You are inspiring all of us. You have that essence that is always providing to the moment, as always. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
And
Ciao,
it reminds us of such wonderful times we had in Inverness. And to have you
Absolutely,
here is a
absolutely.
miracle. It's
Beautiful.
wonderful.
Wonderful. Wonderful memories of everything. That will never go away because they are all actualized now in you and all of us. Inverness is a dream place. It's beautiful. Some days we tell you about it. Just a few moments. It's a lot to say, but it's beautiful. It's a magical place in Northern California for the people who live in Pittsburgh. It's wonderful. Surrounded by
And
woods.
we had those workshops right there where you are in your home. So beautiful.
Yes, yeah. And Nancy used to have the most beautiful garden. And she has already, but it was wild, and beautiful. And you know that the garden was magical because she loved it so much. But they have always to protect it from the deers that come and eat it. And she's married to a most wonderful man who makes the most beautiful, beautiful things of wood. And he carved the wood into balls or whatever form. And they were exquisite because they were all made up from one piece in this beautiful form. So it was lovely.
They
We had the
built
most
the
wonderful
house.
time. So
They
anyway,
built their own house.
I'm sorry.
They built their own house.
Yeah, they built their own house. Amazing.
Yeah.
It was magical. The whole experience of Inverness was the one of these the foundations of unity and motion in some way because of the beauty and the people, and it was just lovely. It's fun, at least in part of my consciousness. So I love you so much. Okay, enjoy it. Have the most wonderful evening. I'll talk to you later. I can't wait to see you again. I like not to stop this forever, but you have to do many things, and I think you should do that. Okay, ciao, ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Love
Ciao,
you.
ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.